Well, hello there, my dear children of the apocalypse. How are you doing today? Welcome back and welcome to one of the concepts that was described in James Clear's book, The Atomic Habits. I want to talk to you about the plateau of latent potential. This very unique concept is best described by this graph. And the graph indicates, it shows very clearly that the perceived progress is never the same as the actual curve of the progress, and that progress is in fact a curve and not just a linear line that constantly goes into the better. Now, the reason why I want to talk about the plateau of latent potential is because I think for all of us, and I've been reading a lot of the comments over the past 20 or so weeks, they all have a common string of thought, and it's usually, how do you deal with those? It's the question, how do you deal with those setbacks? How do you deal with those issues? How do you deal with those things that, take the motivation away? You pick up a project and you get to your first hurdle and you had this vision of how it's going to be, and then it just doesn't, it's not that easy, right? Or you go on a date with a girl and you think, oh, this is going to be, smooth sailing, and then it just doesn't. Like, you're not finding the right things to talk about. You're not getting the escalation process or keynote or whatever, and you start feeling really, you start losing that motivation to keep going. You're not determined to push through. If I relate to the last video, I'd be willing to say you're feeling unlucky. So how do you turn that around? How do you go and you start snowballing right into the positive? Well, what James Clear is suggesting in his book is that what you should really be doing is focusing on tiny little steps, right? Really tiny steps, baby steps. I've used this similar principle over the last, I want to say, almost 6 months now, to use it for motivation rather than progress. What does that mean? Look, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. You may even have bad months and bad years. But what's important is that you always look back at the end of a bad day and you look for what you've progressed, right? Whether this is keeping some kind of a schedule or keeping some type of a mood schedule. This is a very interesting one. Maybe a good video topic for the future. Literally a schedule where you every day, on a scale from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, you select how you were feeling that day. And then at the end of the month, at the end of the year, you can have a look at the actual month and say, okay, so, wow, I didn't actually have that many bad days, or I didn't have enough good days, or what can I do to change it? If you want, you can then add feedback to yourself and say, okay, this day was bad because of such and such. And I think you'll notice on the grand scheme of things, you'll see, there's usually going to be a pattern starting to develop. So if we go back to James Clear and we go back to his idea of baby steps, right, little dots, it really is connecting those little dots along the line. In math, in school, in high school, you're going to be doing a lot of graph, right? X and Y are, and then you have to create some type of graph. I think it's similar to that. I think it's just about dotting out enough, To create a graph in mathematics, you need, as far as I remember, at least 3 points on the graph, plus you have to know where it touches or crosses X. I think that's actually all there is. Does it go past X? Does it go past Y? And then using that, you can create a pretty accurate graph. And so with life, I think it's quite similar, quite simple, and you just want to be dotting that progress all the time. So, you had a bad day today, you didn't get the progress done. No worries. You'll pick it up tomorrow. And today you already made some progress. You have to focus on the progress you did do. Now, it is true, right? This does account to a certain level of complacency. If you're going to constantly be in this state of, oh yeah, I made baby steps, I made progress, I'm doing good, when really you're not reaching your potential any day of the week, then that's going to start accumulating the same way. And at the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, you're going to have a bell curve. It's going to be a pretty bad one, right? Because it's not going to follow that trajectory. So I think you have to take James Clear's advice on the plateau of latent potential with a certain amount of grain of salt, right? But as a whole, looking at the whole concept, it's exactly the way it usually works. You have an idea, you have a visual of where it's going to be taking you, this action, this project, this date, this job, all the things that have this vision. And then you enter this world, you enter this realm, you start to enter your own daydream, essentially, and it's never the way you expected it. Now, this means Not necessarily that it's going to be bad. Sometimes it can be better than expected. And then later there's a decline. But most of the time we enter it and it's like, wait a minute, this isn't exactly as I imagined it. And you have to sort of readapt yourself, reimagine it, re-envision it, restart the project. Sometimes several times you're going to have little, baby steps and a little drop off and baby steps and a little drop off. And that's fine. That really is fine. What the Plateau of Latent Potential helped me with was not so much to create a philosophy or an ideology, but in a practical sense, as a praxeology, create these sort of mental schemas with which I can apply to pretty much all aspects of life and understand that the outcome ultimately boils down to small, tiny, but consistent progress. I think by now you've noticed that the theme throughout all these videos has been consistency, has been discipline, has been motivation. Because I think most of the things that we suffer in life from, most of the things that cause us sadness, depression, pain, I think most of them, if not all, are caused precisely by the lack of those three things that I just mentioned. It's the lack of that ability to create tiny baby steps to get to somewhere. Humans, our ego, our hunger for the world, we really are sometimes extremely gullible and susceptible to our own gluttony. We have an expectation of what things are supposed to be like, and we want to take big steps, right? Like Neil Armstrong on the moon, it's like one small step for men, one big step for mankind. We as a mankind love taking big steps. We like taking leaps. For me, the way I do it is I go back into the past and I look at my life and I sort of just create a bit of a timeline. And if we take the timeline of the 7 or so years that I created YouTube videos, the start was exactly the same. I started somewhere at this line, and then I had an expectation with YouTube. I had a vision of my own, and that vision did not comply with the reality. And again, the graph started to drop, and I was starting to actually lose motivation to create videos because not a lot of people were watching them. I don't think I was making very good videos, but I stuck to it. And I practiced, and I got better and better and better, and then it started to pick up, and then you start getting people in, and then you get more, and then you get more motivation, and you start putting even more time and more effort and more skill, and the content creates more content, and it gets better and it gets more positive. And it's ironic because right now with this YouTube channel at this stage, I am actually again at the bottom of that curve of the plateau. I'm at the plateau, that's what it is, right? I'm at the desert plain where it's a void, it's nothing. When I started this journey, we had, I think, 52,000 subscribers. We're now at 48,400, so which means we've lost essentially 2,500 people. 2,500 people have said, you know what, not for me, brother, bye-bye. And that's a shocker. When people start a YouTube channel from scratch, they are pining. They would dream, they would give their left nutsack to get to 2,500 subscribers. And I lost that much in probably a shorter span of time than most people will get to it. Now, am I happy with that? Am I content with the fact, that 2,500 people? Does it fare well with my ego? Obviously not, right? It is a certain blow almost, knowing that 2,500 people essentially said, hey, whatever you're making right now, I'm not interested, I don't want to be part of it. And that's fine, right? That's part of the curvature. And if this is the bottom, then what I have to do now is just not stop. And obviously you never know. You have a vision, you have a dream. You just don't want to kill that dream because of a unfavorable result or unfavorable reaction from people. You do want to stay consistent, diligent, motivated, all those things. And I think really the plateau of latent potential, when you're there, when you're at the plateau, that's the toughest part of life. Because essentially you're standing in a voiced. And that plateau, I think, is still, to this day, the toughest place to stand. This devout landscape of just nothing, just burning, scorching sun. There's nothing there. There's no vegetation. There's no people. There's no happiness there. You can derive no sense. It's a very, very lonely place, and it exists. It exists somewhere in your mind, and it's going to take you over if you're not able to keep going. And so I'll finish with this quote that's so overused, but so true. And that is, if you're going through hell, just keep going. It's the simplest advice. It very much relates to the plateau of latent potential, the little habits from Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, which I do recommend everybody reads. And it's just truth. And as much as it sucks, I think it's good to be there. I think this plateau, this void, this pain, it's a place you should visit every once in a while, because I think instead of thinking of it as an indicator of failure, or as an indicator of taking the wrong path, or as an indicator of you doing something wrong, or karma, or bad luck, I think we should think of it as part of the progress, and to think of it in a sense of, okay, the fact that I am on this plateau, the fact that I am in this really, really bad environment, I think it's actually a sign I'm going the right way. Embrace it. Embrace that it's part of the curve, and that you are now at the bottom, prepared to take that pain, to take that energy, and just perpetuate yourself into that curve that goes upwards. And that's where you want to be. You want to catch the wave, just like a surfer does. So, like I said, if you're going through hell, keep going, don't stop. Believe in yourself, believe in your progress, believe in your story, believe in your project, whatever it is you might be doing. Put your mind to it. Nothing is impossible. Take care. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. Safe flying.